Mr. Polakowski.
Here.
Mrs. Heather Smith.
Here.
Mrs. Christy Smith.
Here.
Mrs. Williams.
Here.
Mrs. Rhodes.
Here.
For the record, Mrs. Love did indicate that she would not be present tonight.
Any citizens' comments?
Are there any cards over there, Danette? None.
No citizens' comments? All right, then we'll move forward. We're going to have a presentation from Lena Hanna, the PSBA Legislative Advocacy.
We're going to move down.
And we're going to go down to the...
Gail, can you tell me how this came to be?
How it came to be?
Yeah, how it came to be.
I
Through,
reached out to her.
Yeah.
Did anybody else? If I asked the speaker to come, they'd say no.
This is a presentation
Yeah.
from PSBA.
So good evening, everyone. My name is Lena Hanna. I am the advocacy ambassador that serves southwestern Pennsylvania, which means I serve 6 counties, which gives me the opportunity and privilege to work with about 100 school districts and any of the state legislators within those spaces. So any of your state representatives, state senators, or who I interact with. I am also a current school board member myself. So I've been in my role as a school board member for the last 10 years in the South Fayette School District. So I wanted to get started with a few things. There's some information that we saw today at the intermediate unit to go over with the governor's budget. But before I begin, I wanted to thank you all for allowing me to come and really give me the opportunity to share with you some information that I think you'll find really informative, and I think your community members will as well. Those are the kinds of things that I like to try to do so that I can help you. I try to look at it in perspective as a board member because I am one, as I mentioned. So I try to do as much information as I think that if someone was going to present to me what I would want to know, that could be really impactful. So I'll try to make sure I can do all these things together here. So let me grab my glasses back. Okay. So the first thing that I want you to be aware of is obviously that PSBA this is just a proposal from us. It's really so that we can engage in some dialogue, provide you with some information, share with you really what our positions might be on some of these pieces that are currently out there, whether it's legislatively or through what the governor is actually proposing as well. We know that this is a process. There'll be budget hearings, there'll be negotiations, there'll be an agreement hopefully by June 30th, right? Because I know obviously we always have to pass our budget by then. So it would be great if that's the case as well for the governors too. So some of the highlights that we know happened with the governor's budget this time, whenever that was just presented, there's some increases in basic and special ed. There was the charter reform proposal that's part of the budget savings. No Plan-Con monies, but there are monies that are going into a particular account, and I'll be able to share that later. And that deals with really the lead and asbestos issues that a lot of districts are facing. Universal full-day kindergarten, minimum teacher salary increase, and it's basically a lean budget year, as we've seen. So I'm going to go through some of these quickly because as a board member, I want to be respectful of your time too as well. But you can just kind of see that really the difference right now in the funding from last year to this year is about that $114 million. That $14 million is strictly for to be used towards Social Security for districts to use. That's the $100 million that we just talked about. That does the breakdown there that shows you that. The other thing is the BEF formula. It's a basic education funding formula. You'll see that the large green space, right, is the old formula that a lot of your pocket of money does run through. The new formula is in the blue, and then the Social Security is in the orange at the end there. But the interesting piece is what we found, that is if that money ran through the whole formula, if your money did go through that in the new space, the majority of districts would be losing funds versus getting funds. So basically, we're going to skip past that, I think, too. So we're going to go to special ed. The governor did propose a $25 million increase in special ed for districts. What does that actually look like? What does that mean? Well, we can see in 2007 and 2008 where it was. We can see where it currently is, but we can also see for about 6 years it stayed stagnant. There was no funding given extra for special education. As a board member, I'm sure you're aware that that is one of your cost drivers. And it is a mandated kind of cost driver, which we all obviously respect what needs to be done there, but we also know that that's not a percentage of funds that the states reimburse us, and you're going to see that in one of the upcoming slides too. So I'm going to go past that because this slide, I think, indicates it better and really kind of shows how the blue line for the audience, since it's a little further back there, is the bottom line, and that's what the districts get federally funded from special ed, for special ed. The middle line is for what the state share is, and then the top line is what districts, about almost 72% the districts are funding the special education costs. So other mandated costs, same thing, are pensions, charter school tuition, and special ed. And you're going to see for districts that the top line is pensions, and that's about an increase of 626% since the 2008-2009. And then keep going over, you'll see the blue line for the audience as well. That's the charter school cost increase, which has been about 193% for districts. And then the baseline is the special ed cost, which is about 65%. Basically kind of shares that for you there. Same. So we're fortunate that there are some discussions about charter reform that's going to be a great impact, hopefully, if that can actually get through. PSBA has a really great site, even for the audience. If you'd like to, you can access that. There's no login information that you need to have. But what it does do is it gives you a really good, clear perspective of what districts have to face. I also shared with the audience and the board members, there's a handout, and if you haven't gotten it, there are some up here. And it really does show the comparison of charter schools cost and traditional public education, requirements, the differences there, and it's quite interesting, and I think it would be an interesting read and a really good piece of information for the community to be aware of, and also the board members as well. That's the actual governor's proposal. You're going to see some of those things that he's looking at, and the next slide's going to do his a little bit more closely, but if you look at the two bills that are currently out there right now, it's House Bill 2261 with Representative Sersey, and then Senate Bill 1024, Senator Williams and Senator Brewster. Senator Brewster does have part of Westmoreland County. So local senators that are really trying to take hold of this issue and really trying to get some action on it, they're kind of pushing more the transparency piece also in performance and outcomes. So you can see that. Then you're going to see where the governor is proposing. When I mentioned earlier that there was some funding that he was talking about additional funds coming in, what he's speaking of is that if there's the cyber tuition, if we were to cap any student that it was actually attending a cyber school program at $9,500. For the audience sake, I'm not sure if you're aware, but districts have to pay that cost. So if a student is attending a cyber school somewhere else, the district is footing the bill for that. Some taxpayers or communities members think that that might be like more of a parochial school where the families are really funding that tuition. That's not the case with charters, whether it's brick or mortar or cyber. So the governor's proposing a flat rate of that. That flat rate turns into $133 million going back to school districts. A little bit further down is if funding would run through the special education formula. Once again, for the audience, if you don't, with school districts, we have to run through the special ed formula. That does not apply to charter schools. It only applies to school districts. Once again, the website. So other policies and objectives. PlanCon was one of the things that you saw originally on the list, and I'd mentioned to you that I was going to go back to the type of programming that they're going to put the funds in for the asbestos and lead, and that is the RACP program, the Redevelopment Assistance Capital Program, and the reason why the governor is running the funds through that is that there's not as much red tape as there is with PlanCon, but as for the districts, and as for, once again, the community, PlanCon is a program that's supposed to be set up so that districts can get some reimbursement to help them with aging buildings, construction projects. Well, there's no funds there. While there might be a program in place to receive those funds, there is a moratorium on that, so districts cannot use that at this time. Once again, that's another initiative actually that PSBA is pushing to try to help get some funds there. School safety, in the last 2 years, $60 million pot of money had been placed there. Now the proposal is at $15.4 million. And then the governor does have a school mental health initiative out, but it's a little bit sketchy as far as what that might contain and what does that mean. Universal Full-Day Kindergarten is another program that the governor is suggesting, and that would mean that there's 35 school districts currently, which my home school district is one of those districts that does not have full-day kindergarten, but one of the districts that I serve that does not either, just to give you a kind of a sticker shock kind of thing. It's about $800,000 for that district to start a full-day kindergarten program. They have half-day, but if they had to implement that, and there's no funding at this moment, or it was a little vague when the governor spoke with PSBA on Tuesday as to what does that actually mean. Teacher minimum salary, as you can see on there, we do not support that at this moment, and that's in reason, too, because there's no state funding for it. So while we appreciate our teachers and all the work that they do, unfortunately, this is another unfunded mandate that would be placed upon districts, which would then, as it looks to be, increase salaries throughout, because it would be hard to just have one at that base and then you have some place to build off of, and that starting point being higher than the others that might be close to that would need to try to, prospectively get brought up for it. Career and technical education, it's pretty much stayed the same. Transportation, unfortunately, districts will tell you that's a big problem because it's stayed flat for the last 5 years. There's been no additional funding in that. Upcoming dates, and that's just really for the board. The budget talk with the governors we did this week already, and the sectional meetings are coming up. That's Advocacy Day. Far left corner is me, right there at the very, very end. And I would ask you to join me as a board member. It's really a great opportunity for you to work collectively with board members from all across the state, but also an opportunity to really kind of flood the Capitol with some really great message that would be the same and a unified voice together. And if you're already meeting with local legislators here, that's great too. I would encourage you to continue to do that and share your stories. That's the upcoming meetings. Any questions? Yeah. At this time, it's been proposed by the governor, but it would be then if that passed. Yeah. So at this moment, it's a proposal. That can obviously change. We don't know how that'll play out, but yeah, that's one of the things. Yep. Any other questions? Yeah, Chris. It does, and we don't know like what the proposal or what the end result will be with the charters. One of the things that we talked about in the slide was the $100 million, but the PSER contribution that districts are going to have to face, like in total, is $98 million. So what they have to give out. So really, it's $2 million that's going to be really going back into budgets for districts to really kind of spend out. So while in theory it looks great and we appreciate any monies going in there, and we certainly do because, it's still $100 million and we can use that, it helps to balance, but yeah. So we don't know what the charters are going to end up looking like, so it's hard to know where will we end up in the end from that. Yep. Any other questions? I just want to thank Ms. Smith and Ms. Rhodes and Mr. Marcia for meeting with me and giving me the opportunity to present in front of you. If you have any questions, I've given you all my contact information. You will have an opportunity to have the slide as well. From that, I would encourage you to peruse it and really reach out. I'm happy to answer. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, sure. I gave the board a handout of it. There might be some, if you could hand that to them too. They might be in the top of it, yeah. Yes. So what it is PSBA has a site called Success Starts Here. And what it does is it gives us an opportunity to share your narrative and your story, the way that charters, right, are kind of touting out their information. But for us, then it gives me a chance to share that information with the legislator. So it's fairly easy to go into. It's about 300 characters that it's actually wanting the story to be, so it doesn't have to be a whole lot. You can upload pictures, and it's free. So it's a way that you can really share the successes that your district has. Then you can, once it gets populated out, you can put it on your Facebook pages if you have them. Yes, sir. Right. Correct. Yep. Yes. Yep. Yep. Yeah. So that's what we were talking about, and that 14 million is really going to go for the Social Security piece. Yes. Yes, ma'am. I can take a look back at the slide for you, because I know there's one slide that does that a little bit, what you're asking. A 100. Yeah, so I have 100 that are in my territory. So his question, you would ask me, so that indicates that for you, right? That shows you the share, the 98, the total increase, but that 98 is what you were talking about, that's the district share. Right, that's what I just was showing, so that you, yes, in the end. And let me see if I can find the one you were asking, because I know I have that, thought I saw it somewhere. Not that one. Yes. Right, that was what we saw, like, just really what the district contribution has to be, like how much higher that is. And you're questioning, and I'm trying to get to a space that I can see it for you on the line item there. Do you think it's this one? So the difference from last year to this year is 114. Right, correct. But 14 of that is going to go towards the Social Security costs the districts have to use. He did. That is correct. That is absolutely correct. That is correct. Yep. I apologize. I was trying to get where you were getting at with the 160. Yeah, and that would be a number that we would be trying to see if we could get to at least that 160 as well. Can I answer any other questions? No? Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Hey, let's wrap this thing up. Hey, listen. Oh, I never turned down chocolate. Oh, thanks, buddy. Yeah, Reese's.
That's from Mrs. Smith, number 2, brought that.
It's been Reese's. Something in the nice.
Mrs. Rhodes.
You getting anywhere with what's going on with this, with your son? Anything going on with that?
Everybody here?
Okay, I just wanted to say that to answer Dr. Fike's question, this she came about coming here. We had talked to a couple board meetings ago about trying to pass resolutions, trying to figure out a way that we can advocate to our representatives and legislators. So what I ended up doing is I contacted Jason Conway from the intermediate unit, and he actually sent me her email address and said, well, you know that you as a board have an advocacy ambassador. And I said, no, I didn't know that. So I ended up talking to her. She came and spoke to us, basically introducing herself to say, it's my job to connect you with your representatives and your legislators, and I'm always talking to them. She came to the school. She took some pictures of Rachel's closet that she was going to put up and show the legislators. So she offered to come speak to all of us just on some of these things that we're not sure about. She also gave us a lot of information on how to do resolutions, some of the resources that we have available that we didn't know we had available. She said she's welcome. She would love to come back anytime to answer other questions. So I think she'll be a really good resource for us as we're trying to advocate on all ends of budgeting, since clearly we need to.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christie, for bringing it, for inviting her.
Welcome, Jim.
You ready now?
Ready?
Okay.
All right, we're going to resume the meeting here. Minutes of the following board meeting.
The board will be asked to consider the approval of the January 9th, 2020 special voting discussion meeting and the January 16th to 2020 voting meeting minutes.
Counts, fund account check summary.
The board will be asked to consider the approval of the January 2020 fund account check summary.
Board summary report.
The board will be asked to consider the approval of the January 2020 board summary board report general fund.
Treasurer's report.
The board will be asked to approve the next, the 2019 treasury report that will be placed in here for next week.
I have a question about the treasurer's report. When are we going to have the opportunity to look at the budget again?
That's a good question, and I think we need to set a budget discussion meeting, a budget hearing.
I have many, many, many questions. I just don't know when and how I'm going to be able to ask them, and I'm assuming that we're going to have a budget meeting, but I don't see anything coming up.
I will work with Mrs. Rhodes, and we'll get something scheduled off your plate.
Okay.
PlanCon K bond refinanced 2012.
The board will be asked to approve PlanCon K documents regarding refinance 2012 bonds to be submitted to PDE.
Is someone going to explain what that is? Okay. Today.
PlanCon is building.
What was the question?
PlanCon reimbursement.
Yes.
She wants to know what it is.
There is no more PlanCon.
Pennsylvania has a process that school districts go through when you do building projects, be they new buildings or renovations. And it starts with PlanCon A, and culminates with Ks. And what happens with Ks occur when you refinance old bond issues. So you have to do what's known as a new Plan Con Part K. So that, and there's a real thick packet of information that I did not copy for you to save space. That report goes to the Pennsylvania Department of Education, and they recalculate the subsidy, future subsidy that is going to be generated because of those new borrowings. So they take off of the record our old borrowings and replace it with the new borrowings. There will be a slightly lower reimbursement going forward because you've saved some money on those issues. They also then reissue what's known as a permanent reimbursement fraction for those projects. And those fractions won't change, but they have to recertify those rates. So A through K is the whole Plan Con process.
So what's the gist of this? Does this mean we owe money?
No. This is just a formality. To submit this report to the state, as you could see on the cover, you have to have a formal board resolution approving this submission and all the documents that go with it to the Department of Education. So just another step in the formality of the refinancings that took place. Nothing changes.
What does the $74,753, does that say, I can't read the handwriting, does it say accrued interest? It's handwritten at the top of the letter.
Yes, that's just my notes. I just tie in the numbers. So the number that shows up on the new debt equals the par value of the bonds recalled and the accrued interest that had to be paid on those old bonds.
Plan Con K bond refinance, 2013.
Same explanation.
The board will be asked to approve Plan Con K documents regarding the refinanced 2013 bonds to be submitted to PDE.
Superintendent information.
I will give a more thorough report next week, but I've uploaded a lot of materials, documents there. The January enrollment, free and reduced. We're also, Mr. Novikov currently right now is updating our special education plan. So there's a lot of documents in there concerning, what his work has done to this point.
We got that today, right? We got the special ed plan today.
That one,
That's what I gave you, yeah.
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 Copied.
that's the old, that's not the new
Yeah,
one, though. That's the one that we had in place,
I
that
thought
one's
there were
expired.
two of them. Did I just get two of them?
Yeah, there's one that ends in 2020, Dr. Fike, and then
Oh, I know what
there's-
I got. I got ours and I got the states, right? Bureau of Special Education, Pennsylvania Department of Education, Phase 2, December 2019. And this is Special Education Plan 2020. So that's the year we're in or not for next year? 2020, both.
Well-
Both of them say 2020.
Yeah, we're in the process of developing the new plan, so he has to have meetings to involve the community and parents. So he has been holding meetings, and those are the PowerPoint presentations that he's been using at those meetings.
Okay, but this is not the plan.
No, sir, no, ma'am.
See, I thought it said
No, ma'am,
Special
no.
Education Plan.
No, there's one that looks like a Word document that has, I think it was 2016 to 2020 on it.
That one you're holding up, Dr. Fike, if you look on page 2, these were the notes from, this was the slideshow from our planning meeting. So it'll say planning session number 1 on it. If you go back to this other document, it'll say 7/1/2016 through 6/30/2020. That's the current plan.
Okay. But we're going to get a new one after this,
Eventually, it'll be the end of March, I believe.
next month.
Yes.
Business manager.
No special report this evening. Thank you.
Solicitor information.
As we had discussed at previous meetings about Roughdale, I just wanted to bring you up to date. We're basically now forced into proceeding as though a private sale and having to get court approval. And I explained at the previous meeting why that is. So we're eventually going to need appraisals and affidavits that the price that you're receiving is fair and reasonable and better than could be obtained by a public sale. So we can't get affidavits without having an appraiser and an appraiser doing appraisals. I'm trying to find appraisers who are willing to do that and get you quotes on potential fees for that. I think I have 2. I'm not sure if I can get another 1 or 2 more. But at this point, I want to explain to you how this interrelates to some other things and whether or not you're going to be making a decision on that next week or put it off for another month. We've been talking about for a long time the problem of the width of the driveway. And Mr. Miswa and I, he's been trying to help me and I'll help you by getting estimate of what it would cost to pave a width which would allow for access by buses or smaller trucks without having to utilize the opposite lane of traffic. That's the turning radius in PennDOT terms. And the problem is, Mr. Miswa had been in touch with a contractor to try to get some real estimated costs on pavement, but they don't want to do that without a drawing, and we don't have one. However, I've been in discussions with the solicitor who indicated that it was okay with the supervisors for me to be talking with the township engineer, and I had a conversation with him, and they have ordered or acquiring an outside engineering firm to do drawings and, I believe, eventual plans, assuming that they acquire ownership. But they haven't received one yet. Actually, the one that they got was, the instructions were misunderstood and it wasn't what was going to be needed. So as of today, I haven't heard back that they've acquired a revised and updated one. So if they will give us access to that drawing, we can then give it to the contractor and say, at a minimum, we know that this amount of space is needed. What's it going to cost to pave that? Get a report from him or her or them, give that to the appraisers whom you approve, and ask them to consider that information in coming up with the fair market value of the property. Because the importance of being able to utilize a correct legal turning radius would be an important factor for a potential buyer, and thus affect whether or not the $150,000 is a fair price considering all that. We'd had some other estimates that were done by Mr. Miswa. He had shared them with you. Some of them might also be relevant to a report. So right now I'm trying to line those things up to keep that moving. Right now the key piece that would save a lot of time and expense would be if the township would obtain that drawing and share it with us. So at this point, that's my plan.
You saying Roughdale is not sold then?
No, you have to agree to sell it.
I thought we did.
You named a price, which they made a proposal. You said the price was okay.
Right.
There's still some things to be ironed out about the restrictive covenants and then the final more minor terms before you pass a final resolution saying that you're accepting all the final terms and conditions, and then that would authorize the president to sign a sales agreement. So that final resolution we're not at yet. The price is agreed to, the $150.
Are you saying
accepted
they
their
could say
number.
that's not an acceptable price?
I'm saying the court could say that.
Okay, that's what I'm getting at.
Yes.
So it's really not a done deal?
No, it's not done until you've gone to court, had it approved, and had a closing. Then it's done.
How long is that going to take?
I'm not predicting. I'm not predicting.
You mean our appraisal date's no good for them people? We had it appraised, now we gotta spend more money to have it appraised again?
The appraisal that you obtained was over 2 years ago, and it was more than $150.
I understand that.
So that doesn't prove what we're trying to prove, that $150 is better than what you could expect at a public auction.
You're going to say.
And the reason that is
Say we're not
because
buying.
that report didn't take into account what we know about the driveway access problem.
What about the driveway act? I thought we bought that, that belonged to us.
Yeah, you own
And
it.
they were
We
willing
own
to
it.
take over anything that would have to be done for that.
We own it.
And
They're
here
buy-
we go, we're finding another loophole.
We own it. They're buying everything, not just the road and not just the rear. And you have to have court approval.
I'll probably be off the board by the time it gets done.
2 more years, Butch, just 2 more years.
So, might not be that long.
Not on that, no. That's actually my report.
Only been here 2 days.
All right, we're going to move on to new business, formation of committees.
The board will be asked to approve the formation of committees as per the attached proposed board policy document.
District band overnight trip, retroactive.
I think you should talk about those.
Do you think we should, okay. Let's go back to the committees. They want to just talk about it. You have a list.
Mrs. Rose, that's having a really hard time.
No, my point is that you have in front of you a plan with some choices to make.
Okay.
In front of David, between David and,
And that's under Draft A, Proposed Amendment to Board Policy 005, as to section on board committees.
Okay.
You want me to go through it?
Yes.
Not reading it, but I mean, just...
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
go ahead.
to summarize it.
So,
That way
Mr.
everyone's aware.
Mr. Mash and I worked on this, and we feel that you should be making some basic decisions, not us, about some key operating points. If you go down to, well, point number 2 is to basically decide when you're going to start this new policy, whether it's going to be in the next month or 2 then, or you're going to wait a whole nother year till next December, or something in between. Under 3A, you should decide how many people should make up a standing committee. Is it going to go back to the old system of a committee of the whole with all 9 members? Or are you going to have smaller committees, such as 3 or maybe 4? Under B, this is a suggestion for the committees by function: buildings and grounds, number 1; number 2, curriculum and non-athletic extracurriculars; number 3, finance and personnel; 4, safety of students and employees; 5, athletics and transportation. Now, there's no statutorily mandated number of committees or functions. You decide that. You could have more. You could have less. I've seen both in looking at policies of other school boards. So that, again, if you want to propose changes to that, that's an area that you certainly can do that. Under The next page is dealing with ad hoc
Now, I have a
committees.
question. I have a
of
question. If you have
specific
these
types.
committees, and there's 9 people on every committee, who calls a meeting? Or if you have 3 people, who calls a meeting? How do you call a meeting?
Well, you folks get to decide that, but some of the things that are in here are to have a minimum of at least 1 meeting per year, and maybe to set a maximum. Or you can pick some other numbers. Again, that's up to you folks to decide.
But who calls the meeting? Who calls the meeting?
Meeting, I think I designated in here the chairperson or a certain number of members on the subcommittee.
So there has
And
to be a
also
chairperson
requested.
for every committee.
So there'd be a chairperson for every committee, yes.
That's what I was trying to get at. Okay.
For a quorum of the committee? Like if you wanted to have a meeting and get a quorum of the committees, the committee, can you call the meeting?
If you look down on, let's see. D, 5D on page 3, the chairperson of each committee is authorized to determine that committee's public meeting schedule and work with the superintendent board secretary to obtain the necessary public notice and advertisement. And then, there is a spot, B, it is required that each standing committee have no less than 1 and no more than blank public meetings you pick per year without school board approval. The D, any chairperson of the committee or the board president may request superintendent require the presence of either a solicitor or outside counsel for a specific meeting, which I'm assuming won't happen very often.
Mr. Pony, can we go
E-
back to 5D, please?
Which one?
The chairperson and the public notice.
5D.
What is actually defined as public notice?
Advertising in the
And
newspaper,
advertising in the newspaper. So
posting it in the building, and whatever other local requirements you
could it be
have.
placed on our website does that constitute advertising or?
Not under current law.
Not under current, yeah.
So the Scotty Channel, you could put it on there.
You can put it on there, but you still have, if it's a public board meeting, committee meeting, then, and you're going to either be discussing or deliberating or making a recommendation, then that has to be advertised. Theoretically speaking.
Okay, I've always been told that the president of the board is on every committee. It says here, president is ex officio.
Yes.
So the president of the board, and if you had 4 members, you can't have that because the president would make it 5 people, and that makes it a board meeting, right? It's a quorum?
I would think typically.
It's a meeting of that committee.
What?
It would be a meeting, it's still a meeting of that committee. It's not a public board meeting, it's a public committee meeting.
If there's 5 members there, that doesn't change it, okay.
No, because
Okay.
you have meetings of the committee of the whole, too. You've had meetings of 9 people.
Okay.
Now, whether or not you want to do that, whether you want to have 4 plus 1 or 3 plus 1, or some other number, I don't know. It's up to you.
No, I mean, after listening to the last discussion on this, I thought we're all going to jail. We don't do this right.
We are now.
This is coming up for a vote at the next meeting, is that right?
That's for you folks to decide, because you could do one of 2 different things. You could make a motion to suspend the rules, to discuss all this, work it out, and pass it in one meeting. But that would require a motion to suspend the rules to agree to do that, and waive the 2 posting requirements. Or you could work on it and just post it for the first time and maintain your regular way of doing business.
This is a policy amendment, though, right?
You're amending your existing
We're
policy.
amending our policy
Yeah.
on board committees, and this is the amendment for that
Yes.
policy. So you actually vote on this whole thing as one,
But you have to discuss it and fill in, somebody who's going to make a motion is gonna have to fill in some blanks here.
wasn't that what we're supposed to do tonight?
Well, if you wanna talk about it, talk about it. It's okay with me. That's why I wanted to talk about it, so you'd talk about it.
This is a discussion meeting, I
Yeah.
mean, I would assume. Well, what does this board want? What kind of membership do they want? How do they want to handle this?
Are these the standing committees that you suggest, Mr. Masha?
Yes.
The only one I'm uncertain of, I know like one of the roles of the school board is to set policy. Is there a policy committee?
Apparently not.
Not specifically by that name. So really, it would be up to the committee that deals with that particular function to propose policies for that kind of function.
I think there's not one, is that what you're saying?
There's not a
one
pure
listed?
policy
No,
committee.
there's not one.
So you're saying if it was a curriculum-based policy, that would fall under number 2?
Yes.
I kind of feel like maybe it would be important to have a committee that is specifically for policy, considering, I feel like what we've been hearing a lot lately is we don't have an updated policy for that, we don't have an updated policy for that. So if we had a group of people in charge of making sure our policy is being updated, because if we're just dividing it, buildings and grounds, you do your policies whenever, I feel like there has to be somebody on the board that's in charge of policy, and that's what the committee's doing.
So then you're saying that every policy that exists will inevitably fall into one of these 5 categories, right?
No.
Well, I think that's what he's saying.
Well, I can't promise that. It depends on how many committees you have. If you narrow them down, unless you're gonna have, you could have fewer committees, but give them more titles and more functions.
Can we just add
And you-
policy to one of these,
It's up to you.
under number 3 or 2?
You could change the groupings, you could maybe associate finance with buildings and grounds and finance, and then in the place of finance, you could have policy, legal, and personnel.
I just feel like policy's so important, and we're so behind on it, that it should be one of our number 1 focuses. And if it's not even one of the committees, it might get pushed to the side a lot more.
You notice later on in the agenda, I spent a considerable
Yeah.
amount of time
Well,
working.
yeah, well, and I understand that, but that's one of our main jobs. The school board is supposed to be doing the policies. It shouldn't all fall on you. You should be using your time for other things. We should be helping you with that.
Thank you.
Well,
Christie, anybody who sat through those sessions that we had to sit through knows policy, 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 policy. That's all they talked about.
Yeah.
That was their big point, wasn't it?
Mhm.
Number 2, there has, do we need to add, redefine those committees? Can we amend those committee titles, and that way, that would be a truer reflection of what your intents are and your interests?
I'm okay with adding it to one of those, because if you're the chairperson of, let's say, number 3, finance and personnel and policy, then, you're the chairperson of policy. So whatever needs done with that, then you can do it. Is there a reason why there's only 5 groupings? That's just,
I think it was trying to limit everyone
7,
from being
there's 7.
overburdened.
that's what I figured.
That's
But
fine.
that's-
No, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the,
Yeah,
I had
I'm looking
another
at-
version
I
of
did
this,
too.
and I was looking at my old version, I'm sorry.
Then wouldn't number 4 be part of number 1? Buildings and grounds and safety? Isn't that kind of
It
the
could be clumped.
same thing?
I know we had an
It's-
anti-bullying committee in the past. Is that just going to fall under
Yeah, what's that fall under?
safety of students?
I would
Yes.
think that's safe.
Safety of students.
So why couldn't we take number 4 and add policy to that? I mean, that seems like maybe not as busy as the Committee of Finance and personnel maybe,
I'm thinking that too.
but,
It's a lot to put on that one committee.
The major crux of our policy manual is students and employees.
right.
There's, most of our policies are
I
found in
think that would
those
be
two.
a good fit to
So that
put
might be a good
it
fit.
there.
I just picked number 3, because
Oh.
I just glanced down and say, let's put it in 3, but, yeah.
Does 4 look okay, do you think?
I just didn't want to add 6 to make 6 of them.
Right, no, I agree.
How many people vote on each one?
We need to,
2 to 3,
we need to determine that coming
You
up.
have to be on each one of them?
pardon?
You have to be on each one of them with us?
Yes, yes.
Or not. I mean, if you don't want to be,
I think the board
have the
president,
president on every committee, then you
I
can
think the
decide
board
that,
president
too.
would have the pleasure of
But
sitting in or
usually,
not sitting in.
but usually you do, and you have the right, usually have the right to sit in anyways.
Right.
So just for record's sake, we're going to add policies to number 4, safety of students and employees. Is that correct?
Yep.
Is that,
Everybody
is that
good with
agree?
that? That's a
Yes.
good idea.
Is this something we want to vote on tonight so we can start
You
working
can't
towards
vote
it?
tonight.
I mean, something we can suspend the rules next, whatever you were talking about. Suspend the rules next meeting in order to vote on it? Is that what you're saying?
To come to a final, or to still do the 2 postings? That's what you have to decide.
You want to have another meeting tonight? Is that why you want to rush us along?
No,
I'm not understanding your question.
I'm not understanding it either.
I think what,
I'm not understanding what you said about suspending
So
the
if
rules.
we suspend the
Next
rules.
week.
that's-
You have,
Next week, we can suspend the rules.
you can either post this for the first time if you fill in all the blanks,
Okay?
and that'll take another month to be approved again. Or, if you think you can fill in all the blanks and everybody's satisfied, you have to make a motion to suspend the rules and have 6 people agree that this is going to be a one-night, one-time thing,
Okay.
to do it all in one meeting.
Why did you pick finance, curriculum, and non-athletic extracurriculars should be filled, I guess, first and everything else later? Why are they not all equally important and to be filled at the same time?
Because when I started on this last month, Mr. Masha was very concerned about getting started with curriculum and finance. And it was not clear whether the attempt was going to be made to only deal with those 2 areas, and maybe either have a motion to suspend the rules to only deal with those 2, or to take on the effort of doing all of these.
You can fill them
In the-
all and start with those 2, call them as the first meetings. I mean, you can just call them, but I'm just afraid that the remaining committees, it'll go till May or June or something like that.
I am also...
Well, that's why there are blanks there, and feel free to change dates. That's part of our discussion.
I
I'm
think
trying
you
to
should
draw
just
out...
fill all the committees at once, and I think, in my opinion, there should be
But you can't fill them
9
until you designate...
people, 9
I'm sorry.
people. What?
You can't fill them until you designate them and you pass the policy about what they're going to be.
I'm assuming we'll do that. I'm
not assuming anything.
I know, okay. But I think it should be committees of the whole, and the president can appoint 5 chairmen, and they will be responsible for calling the meetings. And probably the first ones I want to call are finance and curriculum and non-athletic extracurriculars, is what I'm saying. But I'm just afraid if you don't do that, this is going to go by the wayside again.
Yeah.
So now you're saying you want all 9 people to be present at each of these committee meetings?
It's like coming to a board meeting. If you're not here, you're not here.
Oh,
You're just not
Absolutely.
here.
I'm in complete disagreement with that.
yeah, I think it has to be 3. I feel like we're already doing so many meetings, and if we can split it up amongst us, and that small group can report back what they've been learning and doing and finding, I think that's a much better idea. We can get a lot more done in a shorter amount of time if we have just a few people on each committee.
I agree with that.
May I express
Could I
my view?
suggest 4 committees? Budget and finance, since budgeting and finance is a big topic by itself. And with budgeting and finance, you could hold your public budget hearings. You could have personnel, policy, and legal. You could have one title called operations, and under operations would be food service, buildings and grounds, security, busing, operational matters. And then you have student affairs, which would be your curriculum, extracurricular, non-athletic, curricular, athletic.
Why'd you set that up for next week?
Did I missed, was there policies anywhere in one of those, Mr. Morneau?
Yeah, it'd be like personnel
Okay.
/ policy / legal, or however you want to title it. It's just try to get it down to 4 committees, because you got 4 committees, and then you got the committee of the whole, which is what we're doing here, so. It's just a suggestion.
I'm teasing you, I want you to do it. I'm teasing you.
I am just concerned that if we have everyone attend every one of these meetings, we're going to burn our board out.
They're not going to attend.
Uh,
I'm insulted by that comment.
I don't think so. No.
No,
So you have trouble getting 3 board members to attend a meeting. At least that was.
There are 8 of us here right now, Catherine. I'm just saying, I'm insulted by your comment. To say that we would not attend the meetings is insulting.
This is a regular board meeting. That's the difference. This is a committee meeting.
And I would prefer to have a committee made up of 3 dedicated people to be in a meeting, work through issues, and have recommendations to bring back to the board as a whole, than to have people in and out of meetings because they can't attend 6 meetings a month on all different nights.
Plus, then you can learn about the committee you're on, and you can research stuff about it. I don't have time to research stuff about 5 different committees, but I can really focus time on 1 or 2.
With 4 committees, you could have 2 board members on each. That way, you wouldn't violate any chance of making decisions as a whole, because it's a really small committee. And then your 3rd member could be the president ex officio, who could sit in on any one if and when she chooses. Or you could regroup it a different way. I'm just throwing out suggestions.
Thanks, Jim.
You could sit in with me, finance and budgeting. We could
Well,
do risk
I'm just
management.
going to say that I hope everybody looks at this week, because I plan to motion to suspend the rules next week so we can get this over with and start it on.
Okay,
So
I'll
I'm
send
hoping
my
everyone
people.
takes a chance to look at it and can make a decision next week.
Any more discussion on that? Or are you, done with that?
I am.
All right. We're gonna move on. District band overnight trip retroactive.
I would first like to congratulate, we have 3 students that are representing our district at the district band. The board will be asked to approve an overnight trip for 3 students in district band, Monica Bentz, Jonah Harshel, and Eric Barber, to stay overnight at the district band festival held at Deer Lakes. New hours have been instituted this year as follows: 8:30 a.m. seating and 6 p.m. dismissal. Performance times have changed, and due to the safety of the students and their chaperones, it is requested that the group be permitted to stay overnight. The trip takes over an hour with no weather and traffic issues. The festival takes place Wednesday, February 12, 2020 through Friday, February 14, 2020, and other districts attending are planning on staying overnight. I would really hate to put our students in a precarious position, especially if the weather holds true for what's predicted tonight. They would be out on the roads tomorrow morning.
Something coming to them?
A little concerned now.
A little late now, eh? He's already there.
Both concerns and
Yeah.
We were caught in the catch-22 there.
It's gonna go down to 17 in the morning.
Scared you.
Huh?
Request for
Yeah, I got a 4-runner. I'm ready to go, baby. 4-wheel drive.
I'm really confused. We can't vote on this, right?
Not
But it's tonight.
but we can retroactive, that's why they put retroactive in the motion.
I just wanted the board to be aware that these kids are out there.
So we said okay, next week we say okay retroactively. Okay.
So what, we didn't know about this before? This is gonna happen, this is sort of when those things come up?
Well, maybe it come up after our last voting meeting. I don't know. I'm just assuming it did.
Must-
Must have.
They were actually changing the times at the beginning of this week. I think the latter part of last week, the beginning of this week.
That's probably why we didn't. Request for exoneration.
The board will be asked to approve a request for exoneration from property tax.
Adjudication matter 2019 to 2020, number 102.
The board will be asked to adopt the resolution of student discipline matter 2019-2020, number 102.
Review of school policies and updates, section 000.
The board is asked to recognize the updates to the following board operational guidelines, and they are listed there. And the board is asked to approve the updates to the following board policies and the submission of these policies to PSBA to post in finished form. These are in raw form, the policy. What we have to do is submit these. If you approve the submission of the PSBA, they will take it out of the draft form, put it in real form, and then I'll have to bring them back to you again. Then you'll have to approve. Am I correct, Mr. Petone?
I'm struggling to get back in the board docs. I fell out. I'm sorry.
I know I had.
But yeah.
I had a really hard time.
Sounds correct.
Yeah.
Mr. Petonic, you may use mine.
And then they have to be posted
Right
for
here.
public.
Here's your,
But this is the first step in getting the process rolling.
I
How do
You
you
haven't
post?
changed anything.
I've gone in and made suggested changes because PSBA there'll be, for instance, the superintendent may be in charge of or asked to do a function, and then there'll be a little checkbox, and I would have to go in and actually check within that box because right now there's nothing in that box to indicate a choice. So have to go in and make a choice, and it's all geared towards suggestions, and I asked Mr. Petonic to review these also. So it's basically taking it out as a very, very raw form, entering into a choice, and then we have to submit them back so that it could be put in not the raw form, but at least in a format that we can then bring back to you.
Since one of these items is a home language survey, what is that?
That's any student that's coming into our district that does not have English proficiency. We're required to see how we can provide services to him.
You don't go to the home though. It says home survey.
No, they take that. They would take that to their parents, and that could be in the language of the individual family.
But the parents can waive it, huh?
Yes.
Review of school policies and updates, section 100.
Once again, I'm going to ask you to do the same thing. The board is asked to recognize the following updates to the administrative regulations. These are the administrative regulations for the 100s. And the board will be asked to approve the updates to the following board policies and the submission of these policies to PSBA to post in finished form, like out of the rough form.
So just to be clear, if the board wants to go and look at the draft of each one of these, they go to policies and then go to draft and then look up the particular policies, as you and I have painfully done.
Yes. On the right-hand side of board docs, you'll see there's policy tabs with a caret. If you click on the caret, oh, don't do that. That would bring up the policies, active, draft, retired. And then there's on the bottom, the very bottom, it says school district PNN plus. That's where I go in, and that's where the PSBA updates would be found. So I would go in there, and I would determine which policies have been updated. They're updated quarterly, so I would go in there, and then I would have to move those updated policies into the draft forms so that we can work on them.
These are 0, 1, and 2. How many are there?
They go up to 900.
900. It's just getting a little complicated.
Review of school policies and updates, section 200.
The board is asked to recognize the following updates, the administrative regulations, and you can see there are a considerable number of those. You're just recognizing those. I don't have to submit those. Those are already in finished form. They're just the regs that we would follow.
Review of school policies and updates, section 300.
The board will be asked to re-elect for an unexpired term, which will run from July 1st, 2022. Oh, I'm sorry.
You jumped ahead.
Oh, I'm
This
sorry.
is the review of school policies and
Oh, I'm
updates,
sorry.
section 300. It
Oh,
would be the same thing.
Yeah,
You just
the
said
board is
so.
asked to recognize the following updates, administrative regulations, and there's only one of those there. Apologize for jumping
No,
ahead.
that's okay. For now, 2020 re-election of WIU board member.
The board will be asked to re-elect for an unexpired term, which will run from July 1st, 2022, for the WIU board. The WIU has restructured the term so that 1/3 of the board is elected each year. Also, the timeline has been adjusted in order to give all board members more time to vote and turn in their ballots. Therefore, the WIU has revised the nominations and election rules.
FMLA intermittent.
The board will be asked to approve an intermittent family leave, medical leave for Ruth Ann Porball to provide care for a family member who is ill.
Payment for musical staff.
Attached is the listing of those individuals that will be involved in the spring musical, and per what is attached here, asking for payment of those through the regular process.
Military leave.
The board will be asked to approve military leave for mandatory training for Bethany Yotzi from March 12th through April 30th, 2020, with no breaks in service. Ms. Yotzi will return to school approximately May 1st, 2020, and I want to congratulate her on taking that initiative to do that.
Resignation of crossing guard.
The board will be asked to accept the resignation of Amber Causer as District Crossing Guard effective February 21st, 2020, and authorize administration to advertise the position.
Resignation of middle school cheer coach.
The board will be asked to accept the resignation of Liza Ladowitz as middle school cheer coach effective February 14th, 2020, and authorize administration to post the position.
Resignation of percussion instructor.
The board will be asked to accept the resignation of Nicholas Driscoll, percussion instructor, effective at the end of the 2019-2020 season, and authorize administration to post and advertise the position.
Varsity baseball volunteer.
The board is asked to approve Lonnie Patoka as volunteer baseball coach for 2019-2020 baseball season.
Retirement notice.
The board will be asked to approve the retirement notice with regrets of Terry Greer, district van driver, effective June 3rd, 2020.
Do you have any citizens' comments? Seeing none?
I have a number of questions, but we apparently just rolled through so fast there. I'm missing the discussion part. Can we go back to personnel? It says re-election for the WIU board member, so you re-elect the same person, is that right? It says re-election, so that's not election, that's to re-elect the same person.
Currently, right now, we do have a WIU rep.
Yeah, Heather, so
Yeah.
we just re-elect her.
Yes.
What about this thing here about, somebody, you want to waive somebody's taxes? Is that what that is? Where is that?
Number 3, request for exoneration.
Where
Did
is
you have a chance to look at that, Dave? That refund or?
Bill was.
Are you talking about the,
Jim was
the
gonna-
notice from Fayette County?
Mike's talking about.
Yeah, where is it?
Yeah.
I don't-
Yes.
I don't know. I saw it and I can't find it.
That was a very well, written letter from, Mr. Brownfield,
Up above the-
lawyer and director of the assessment for Fayette County. There were two parcels. His explanation on the first parcel
Exoneration.
was regarding
Oh,
a
thank
mobile
you.
home and other improvements on the property had been demolished and removed. We verified removal and zeroed out the value of all improvements on September 11th, following an internal rule that any change in value made after September 1st be effective for the following year. The value change in this instance was initially made effective for 2020. However, given the written notice provided by the attorney and time of same, there was sufficient time for our people to have reasonably expected to verify the removals and adjusted the values before September 1st. We've reviewed this matter, and it qualifies for the September 1st exception. So, per Lori Hanchar, our tax collector for Upper Tyrone Township, the school taxes of $30.29, which included the 10% penalty, were paid on December 10th. As this office has now removed the entire $1,800 value of the parcel effective in 2019, no taxes otherwise should have been due. Therefore, they are recommending that we refund the entire $30.29.
Does this remove this property from our tax rolls? No.
Not the property, just the value that was on it, the mobile home.
There's two properties. though.
This is an Upper
Well,
Tyrone.
there's another parcel. There's a separate parcel. In a different parcel, and there were the details were attached. There was a dwelling fire, separate property, separate owners. There was a dwelling fire which substantially destroyed the home on this parcel, and resulting code enforcement action officer removed the value of all improvements on the property on April the 5th, 2019. Unfortunately, the field assessor who made this change failed to forward the file to our clerical office, and the reduction in value was never recorded in our database. Therefore, the property owner paid the tax on an erroneous assessment. They didn't pay it on the reduced value. The adjustment downward was $51,540 because the dwelling was destroyed by fire. The original assessment was $67,140. So now the correct assessed value is $15,600. The amount due would have been $262.54 at penalty when it was paid December 10th. And for this reason, he's recommending that we refund $867.37. So they're very minor refunds, and I think for very good reasons. I think these property owners deserve our consideration and refund.
How often does this happen?
Well, unfortunately, a dwelling fire could happen at any time, and if it happens, we'll be notified or they'll take care of the reduction in their property value before they have a chance to pay the tax bill. In this case, this happened after they paid the tax. The valuation wasn't adjusted accordingly. The other one, mobile home, I'm not sure what the situation was with that, but they're very infrequent, and I think for this reason, it's good.
So that reduced amount stays like that forever then?
No, in fact, what's left on the property value is obviously the land, and
Right.
I imagine it's the foundation. The home itself was destroyed by fire, so if a new home is built on that property,
Okay, but if nothing is built on that property, that lower number stays the same forever?
yes, that's correct.
Jim, the beginning of the letter, when it says Mr. Mornell, it
Isn't that an
says,
assessment appeal?
consider exoneration of all or a portion of the 2019 school taxes. Well, why does it have like an option for,
I really don't understand
All of it
that wording unless
or-
that's some sort of legalese.
There's a lot of places that have burned down.
Okay,
The gist of the letter from my standpoint was the refunds.
okay.
I think they've already made the assessment adjustments.
The portion of it,
Yes.
yes, okay.
So in other words, I think what he's saying is we don't have to, we could vote to not refund this money. I'm not saying that's what I would do, but I'm just saying maybe that's why he's saying.
Yeah, he's recommending
refund half
that we
or
refund
whatever
those
we
taxes.
chose.
Yes, for these reasons, as he stated.
So there's already been a reassessment of this property through the regular channels. And the value is reduced already. And it's going to stay that way.
They rebuild.
There was just a mistake. They just forgot to record it.
Yeah, they
Well, my
paid their
concern's
tax
not the
before
refund,
the value
my
was
concern's the
reduced.
future, that forever we get less money, right?
Yeah.
Forever.
But I don't think we have a
Between the
chance
two,
to
it's
change
less than
that.
$1,000.
No, I'm not objecting to the refund. I'm fine with that. I just wanted to be clear that that's the same as another property assessment appeal, right? That has been conducted.
Fortunately, at Ligonier, I had the authority to just refund without going through this.
Am I crazy or what? I mean,
No, a casualty loss where the building, the improvement is gone,
yeah,
is supposed to be handled administratively by them going out and looking at it and seeing that it's not there anymore.
right. So they reduce the value of that property.
They take the improvement value. There are two portions to an assessment, the improvement and the land.
Right.
So if the improvement is destroyed, that becomes a zero.
Okay, and if it stays that way, that will be our tax base on that piece of property forever.
Yes.
That was what I was trying to get at, the future. I don't object to the refund. I'm just looking at what's happening. If 150 people did that, because there's burnt down houses all over the place, but I understand that now.
Well, you hope for this family that they had, fire insurance and that the insurance will at least, reimburse them for a rebuild of their home to some degree.
We would hope for that.
You hope for them, for their sake.
Citizens' comments, then I will call for adjournment.
No,
Motion?
you're
No.
adjourning to.
Oh, we're
executive session.
adjourning to executive session, but I don't think we're coming back, are we?
No.
Then that's what we'll do.
Motion to adjourn to
Motion
executive.
to adjourn
I'll
to
make that
executive session.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Motion adjourned.
Out of here.
Maybe 3 months ago, on the salt lines of the property, the family did not
Yeah.
tell the fact
That it's
3 or 4 months. They were charged the
I
whole
didn't
year.
realize, so the whole, I don't care, yeah, I don't remember that. There's like 50 burned down properties, there's around my house, those house places.
Must not.
So they haven't told us.
They must
They
not care
don't know
about
that.
paying the full.
No. No.
I just knew the lady that was in the tax assessment
Uh-huh.
office, and she got a lot of bad pub from that. She's like, well, it's not our fault, they never
Right, they would
said
have.
that the property was burned
Yeah,
down.
yeah.